Hello, my fellow adult children. My name is Morgan. If it's your first time seeing me, welcome. Hello. Today we are going to be doing a tier list style ranking of the shows from our childhood. I have a total of 34 shows, 19 Disney Channel and 15 Nickelodeon. First, let's address the elephant in the room.
I created this monster, and I've got to stop him.
So there is a clear bias here. SpongeBob for me is above Elite.
Some of y'all about to be real mad at me, but it must be said.
Nothing has ever and will ever compare to my boy SpongeBob. So technically he's not even on this list because he just doesn't fit into any of these tiers. Okay, so our tiers for today, starting at the top, is number 1, Elite No Notes. This category speaks for itself. These are the elites. The next category we have is I Think You Dropped Something, My Jaw.
Snot girl, I think you dropped something. My jaw.
This is the great category. These shows are great, they're just not quite elite. Then we have I Recommend the Creme Brulee.
I recommend the creme brulee.
This is the good tier. These shows are good, I would recommend it to a friend, but I'm not ranting and raving about it. Our fourth tier is, well, that didn't work.
Well, that didn't work.
These are shows that just kind of missed the mark. And our bottom tier is Honey, You Missed Auburn Big Time.
Oh no! The box said it would be a Honey Missed Auburn!
Well, honey, you missed Auburn big time!
These are those low-ranking shows that just don't compare at all to the others. I also have 2 birds and they're trying to sleep right now, so if you hear them flailing around, it's because they're pissed at me. Okay, so let's get right into this. First show up on our list is That's So Raven. And spoiler alert, I already know people are going to come for me for ranking this so low, but hear me out. I just didn't watch it that much. It's not that it was bad, it just wasn't one of my go-to shows. I don't have that strong nostalgia for this show that I do with others. I will say That's So Raven was a little bit ahead of its time. It tackled the real world issues that I feel like was pretty rare for Disney at this time. But I feel like my biggest issue was that the formula was super predictable, obviously. It literally showed you into the future of the episode, but you knew it was going to be a little bit different.
Right on. Come here, let me tickle your pussy.
Just made every episode a little bit too easy to figure out. I know people love this show, and I respect it for being a Disney Channel classic, but it just wasn't one of my favorites. Maybe because it was a little bit before my time, I didn't quite connect to it enough. But either way, no hate, just not top tier. So That's So Raven is going into I Recommend the Creme Brulee. Up next, we have Fanboy and Chum Chum. I feel like this show got a bad rep. It could get annoying at times, but I feel like overall it was like cute and charming. It didn't take itself too seriously, and I respect that. I actually liked the character design, which is controversial because I know a lot of people hate on it, but I feel like visually it stood out. There wasn't much substance to this show, but sometimes you need just like a silly, goofy, feel-good show.
Here are your raisins and your apple slices, and I packed you an extra cape in case you get cold.
At the end of the day, not much depth here, but it was a cute show. Fanboy and Chum Chum is going into Honey, You Missed Auburn Big Time. Up next we have Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. That's a mouthful. Ned's Declassified came out right before my Nickelodeon peak era, and it was almost in with the elites. The show was genuinely funny, and unlike a lot of other shows, the side characters added a lot of humor, and just overall added a lot to the experience, as opposed to just kind of being background noise.
You got it, Jennifer. And, do you think you could stop calling me Coconut Head? Get a decent haircut and we'll talk.
And at this time, I was literally taking notes. I thought this was the school survival guide, but realistically, all my notes were just how to be Susie Crabgrass, because she was a fucking baddie. This show had some of the most iconic characters. At the end of the day, Ned's Declassified was hilarious and super engaging. It just didn't have the longevity as some of my top tier Nickelodeon shows, but still a classic. Ned's Declassified is going into I Recommend the Creme Brulee. Up next is The Loud House. Honestly, the show's kind of fire. I can't rank it very high because I've never voluntarily put it on, but when it is on, I'm watching. It's just one of those shows. It's like Bluey. One thing I will say, it has too big of a cast. I know they're all like siblings and it's like The Loud House, but you just can't really connect with any of the characters because there's so many of them all the time.
I don't know, I just don't think this is like right for me.
And like, what is the actual plot of this show? No idea. Also, the dad in that show is voiced by the man who played Irwin in Zack and Cody's. That's a little Disney Nick crossover moment. Final thoughts, never really know what's going on, but it's watchable. but the Loud House is going into Honey, You Missed Auburn big time. Next we have Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb is so close to top tier. The show's just entertaining as fuck.
Cupid.
Hey everyone, I'm wearing a diaper.
Like, why does Ferb not speak? Why is Candace obsessed with snitching? Why is Perry a secret agent? No clue, but I love it. The concept is so repetitive, but somehow it never gets boring. It was always summer, the boys were cool as hell, Vanessa was a baddie.
You can do it, Dad!
And Dr. Doofenshmirtz has to be one of the best antagonists in any of these shows. Okay, so let's talk music. This show had no business dropping some of the most iconic Disney Channel bops of all time. Busted was an anthem, and the little music video went hard.
And when I do, you're gonna be busted. I don't wanna put the hurt on you.
And Candace was my girl. Yeah, she was a rat, but she was the queen. Phineas and Ferb is hands down one of the greatest animated shows of all time. A lot of shows start losing their plot or developing their characters too much over time, but this one stayed consistent and it stayed good. Like I said, so close to top tier, but they are going in I Think You Dropped Something, My Jaw. Up next we have So Random. So Random was basically Sunny with a Chance, but without Demi Lovato, who kind of carried that show on her back.
Oh, my back! Ah, I threw out my back!
I liked that it was like a sketch comedy show because that was new for me. I know that they had the Amanda Show, but that was a little bit before my time. Also, quick pause, I know people are probably going to be tweaking that I don't have Lizzie McGuire and Amanda Show, Rugrats, all of that on here, but like I said, that was before my time. I just didn't really get to watch any of that, so I missed out. But back to So Random. This show just did not stick with me at all. I remember it being funny, but I don't really remember it as a whole. The characters were all pretty wacky.
I promise justice in every case of false yearbook inscription.
Which makes sense for like a sketch comedy show, but there were no real standouts in this cast. Honestly, I loved the concept, but I wish it were like a whole different show and not a spin-off of Sunny with a Chance. So Random is also going into Honey, You Missed Auburn big time. I promise I'm not ranking everything low, I just kind of saved the good ones for the end. Up next we have Sweet Life on Deck. Look, spin-offs are never going to be as good as the original.
Boo, tomato, tomato, tomato.
It's just the facts. Sweet Life on Deck was fun, but let's be real, it was no Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. One thing I did like was the new characters, but I missed Maddie, I missed Carrie, Esteban. They were all such pivotal parts of the original series that their absence was definitely felt in this show. But with that being said, I did love the addition of Bailey and Woody. Woody was one of those token funny guys. Anytime he was on screen, you're giggling. And Bailey was a great match for Cody. Thought they were super cute. All in all, it was a decent show. It just wasn't Sweet Life. Sweet Life on Deck is going into, well, that didn't work. Up next we have The Thundermans. Honestly, call me crazy, this show was kind of good. I actually liked the whole family, I think, even with Max being a little shithead. Every episode had some kind of life lesson, and while the stories weren't super interesting, they were fun enough to keep me tuned in for a little bit. Phoebe was that goody two-shoes girl, kind of gave me Teddy from Good Luck Charlie vibes, and I'm here for it. I feel like this show was kind of like a less good version of Lab Rats. And Lab Rats isn't on here because it was Disney XD and I kind of only did Disney and Nickelodeon. But if you want to see more, I can do Disney XD, Cartoon Network, maybe some DComs. Comment down below if you want to see that too. Okay, so The Thundermans is going into, well, that didn't work. Up next we have Austin and Ally. Austin and Ally pisses me off. The show itself was okay, it wasn't anything to write home about, but here's the thing. I love Disney and Nickelodeon music that comes from these television shows, but tell me how you're gonna make a whole series about two musicians, a singer and a songwriter, but then Phineas and Ferb has better music than you. Explain it. All the music in Austin and Ally was mid, if I'm being generous. With one little exception, Not a Love Song is kinda good.
But it's not a love song, not a love song.
I feel like the backbone of this show was Des and Trish. Ally was always catching strays from Des for no reason, and it was so funny.
We just announced it. We're nominated against each other for Best Debut Album.
No way, I can't believe it. Why would they nominate Ally?
Overall, it was entertaining, but it genuinely makes me angry that the music sucked so bad. And for that, this is going into, well, that didn't work. Up next is Liv and Maddie. And don't come for me, but if I'm being honest, this show was a lot better than I expected it to be. Another Disney twin moment, except this time it was one person playing both roles. And yes, I absolutely spent way too much time each scene trying to clock the stunt double. But this show introduced us to Dove Cameron. Liv was so extra and dramatic and annoying with all the singing.
Sing it loud!
But she's so me, so I love her. Also, one of my favorite Disney Channel quotes came from this show. Even my dad knows that one. Liv and Maddie is actually going into I Think You Dropped Something, My Jaw. Okay, next up we have Sam and Cat. Sam and Cat is another spin-off, but I feel like they picked the perfect characters to make a spin-off from those two shows, Victorious and iCarly, that it made it work better than some other ones. I really wasn't a fan of any of the side characters in this show. They didn't really add much for me. But Sam and Cat themselves were entertaining enough to keep me engaged.
You can't just wipe me away!
Cat's character change throughout Victorious and this show made me upset. By the time Sam and Cat came out, Cat was so dumbed down from her original character in Victorious that I feel like it took away the depth of her character. If she would have kept her original personality, I think this show would have been even better. Spin-offs are hard to make genuinely good, but Sam and Cat actually held up pretty well compared to the other ones. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a total flop. So Sam and Cat is going into I recommend the creme brulee. Next up is True Jackson VP. First things first, one of the best theme songs of all these shows, which is surprising. Now, was this show funny? Yes. Was it realistic? Absolutely not. Ain't no way a high school girl is becoming VP of some big fashion company at like 15 years old. I'm sorry. But if you can get past that, the concept was fun. Plus, unlike most Disney and Nick shows, this cast was pretty adult heavy besides the main core high school students. If we're talking characters, Lulu was the worst. She was super clingy and annoying and I just couldn't deal with her. On the other hand, Amanda was a legend. She was such a bitch, but honestly, I probably would be too if I was working with a bunch of high schoolers running my company. I will say having a Nickelodeon show set in an office was cool because that's not typical for a high school show. Problem was I kept waiting for this show to get better and it just never really did. But with all that, True Jackson VP is going into I recommend the creme brulee. It's not bad. Okay, next up is Casey Undercover. Casey Undercover almost shouldn't even be on this list, but it is. This is when Disney started to fall off. I feel like they knew they had something with Zendaya and they tried to put something together, but it just kind of missed. It wasn't catchy. I don't remember it being all that funny. I feel like this was just like the last watchable Disney Channel show. This show just wasn't great. It's going into Honey, You Missed Auburn big time. Next up is Ant Farm. I liked Ant Farm. The Advanced Natural Talent program was pretty cool because it wasn't just like a performing arts school. They all had like random talents, which was fun. I liked all the characters on this show. They all had like quirks.
Next thing you know, snap! A crocodile bites your head off.
They were all fun to watch. I feel like Olive was adorable. Paisley was adorable. China was a really good singer.
Saying it, oh, baby, let's go.
Good character. It was fun and entertaining. Solid show, just not top tier. It is going into I recommend the creme brulee. Up next is Fish Hooks. The theme song to this show ate.
1, 2, 3, 4. Who's that knocking at my door?
I don't know why it went so hard, but it did. As far as the actual show, the concept wasn't anything crazy, but I feel like it was just memorable. Everybody remembers this show. It just had good vibes. It had fun animation, good characters.
Chelsea, come back to me! I need your help. I've been pulled into the vortex.
No complaints on this one, but when you stack it up with the Disney Elites, it just doesn't quite make the cut. So it is going into, well, that didn't work, but it's almost one tier up. It just doesn't really compare. Okay, I think I'm gonna take a little break right here and talk about some honorable mentions. These are shows that didn't quite make the cut. They were either before my time, a little after my time, or just like didn't stack up with the rest. I'm just gonna do a quick fire of shows, so if you haven't heard your fave yet, maybe it's on here. Brandy and Mr. Whiskers, The Buzz on Maggie, I Didn't Do It, Bunked, Stuck in the Middle, Bizarre Bark, Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, Wonder Pets, Wow Wow Wubsy, Mighty Bee, Tough Puppy, How to Rock, Haunted Hathaways, and Life with Boys. These are all shows I watched from time to time, but not enough to know anything about them to put them on the list. Okay, back to the tier list. Next we have Shake It Up. I watched Shake It Up a lot. I was obsessed with Rocky and Cece's friendship. When Rocky would climb through Cece's window to have like breakfast and chat before school in the morning, I wanted that. I liked this show within a show concept with the Shake It Up Chicago and Cece's dyslexia arc.
What is going on? How come you never told me you had dyslexia? I was too embarrassed.
That was iconic. I think Gunta and Tinka were the moment.
I'm Gunther.
And I'm Tinka.
And we are Zephyr.
They were like my favorite side characters. They stole every scene they were in. Okay, Shake It Up is going into I Recommend the Creme Brulee. I never understood why they had Selena Gomez sing the theme song to that song when Zendaya and Bella Thorne could both sing. Kinda. Okay, next up is Game Shakers. This also almost didn't make it to the list, but I watched it here and there. Honestly, I don't even know why I put this on the list. I like barely watched this. Oh, they had a computer game. It was like a narwhal, like jumping or something. And I used to play that all the time. So I think that's why I put it on here. But nonetheless, I don't remember anything about that show. It's going into Honey, You Missed Auburn Big Time. Next up is Sunny with a Chance. When this show came out, I was excited to see Demi in a show because she was in Camp Rock, and Camp Rock is one of the best Disney Channel original movies of all time. I feel like still to this day, Demi is very underrated. That girl can sing. Like I said before with So Random, I liked the sketch show concept. I feel like Demi's characters were always way too over the top and like annoying, and it kind of made it hard to watch. And I also hated Chad because he was supposed to be like the heartthrob, but he just was a douchebag. And those kind of characters always annoy me. I feel like this show had potential, but just wish it was executed a little bit better. It is going into, well, that didn't work. Okay guys, I'm actually gonna film the rest of this tomorrow. I've had my makeup on for like 12 hours and pimples are literally like forming as we speak. So tomorrow you're gonna have a better, brighter version of me and we're gonna get back to the ranking, but I'll see you in 2 seconds. Okay, it's now the next day and somehow I look worse. Up next we have The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. The early Disney Channel shows are unmatched. The beginning of the series was perfect. Every character was exactly who they were meant to be.
Are you referring to the shift lever that says PRNDL?
That's a child's, Mosby. I know how to spell Prindle.
It is not something you spell. It is a gear shift. The letters stand for park, reverse, neutral, drive, and loud.
But this is one of those shows where I feel like they took the character traits too far over time. Like London started out as dumb and rich, but not completely incompetent. But they just kept making her ditzier and ditzier until it was too much. Same thing happened with Kat Valentine on Victorious and kind of PJ Duncan on Good Luck Charlie. Like at some point you start losing the depth of the character, and that's a shame. But honestly, that is one of the very few complaints I have about this show. The show was very funny, very entertaining.
London? You might want to take a look at the front page.
Not now. London's reading about London.
Imagine just running around that fancy hotel and causing chaos every day when you're like 12. Maddie was definitely my favorite. She was cute, smart, and I wanted to be her. Also, London and Mr. Mosby's relationship was so cute. Sweet Life of Zack and Cody is a great show. Not really anything bad to say about it. It is going into elite tier, our first elite of the day. Next up we have Fairly Odd Parents. Fairly Odd Parents is a classic. Everybody wanted their own fairy godparents after this show came out. One thing that made this show fun was there was no limits. Timmy could pretty much wish for whatever he wanted, but it always backfired in some way.
I don't care if I never get to make another wish. Just please don't take them away from me. They're my family.
The craziest part about this show is that it ran for so long. And it actually stayed good for most of its run, which is rare for a show that's on the air that long. It hit all the points. It was exciting, it gave you the life lesson, and the stories could really go anywhere. The reoccurring characters added a lot to the show, except for a few, you know who you are. But some of them were so good, like Mr. Crocker tweaking out about the fairy godparents every 10 seconds.
A fairy godparent! Fairy
Vicky being an absolute psycho. Loved her. And Cosmo was your classic dumb but lovable character, but he wasn't too dumb. Every time he spoke, I knew I was gonna laugh.
Hey! You made me make a poopy!
This show holds a special place in my heart. Pink and green will never get past me. I know it's you, Cosmo and Wanda. Fairly Odd Parents is going into I Think You Dropped Something, my jaw. Up next we have H2O, Just Add Water. This show only made it on here because of Cleo and Emma.
Come on, Cleo, you can't stay there forever.
And I say that with my chest. That's its biggest impact that it left. Nickelodeon definitely had some bangers, but compared to Disney, it just wasn't as consistent, and this show just goes to prove that. The show had so much potential, but it never really had me hooked. To be fair, I barely watched the show. I tuned in very few and far in between. I don't really remember any of the characters all that well. At the end of the day, I just feel like this show was pretty cheesy and poorly written. Aww. It's going into Honey, You Missed Auburn big time. Up next is Big Time Rush. Big Time Rush was the best children's boy band ever created.
I said what I said, okay?
These guys were everything to me when I was growing up. I had everyone's poster in my room except for James. I went back and forth between Kendall and Logan, but it was like 90% Logan and like 10% Kendall. The show just had the appeal. I love that they started out as average dudes from Minnesota and then they became this big boy band. But let's talk about the music. Till I Forget About You, Windows Down, still in my top songs listened to this day. Their songs weren't just good for a Nickelodeon band, they were actually good, in my humble opinion. If you just start playing Big Time Rush songs, I guarantee you're gonna know a lot more than you think, and you're gonna love a lot more than you think. But back to James. Hated him, he was so conceited.
Hello. I'm James. I'm in a band.
And none of the other guys were like that. And he wasn't even the cutest one, so he had no right to be acting like that. On the flip side, I loved Kendall and Joe's relationship, and I also loved, I think her name was Camille, and Logan's relationship. They were super cute, especially because she was like a nerd on Zoe 101 as Quinn. And then she made a reappearance in this show as a whole different character, but I know her backstory, and they're so cute together. At the end of the day, Big Time Rush had amazing music, it was an amazing show, had an amazing cast, and I will be seeing them in concert when they come back. This show is very close to my top tier, but it is going in I Think You Dropped Something, my jaw. Next up, Zoe 101. This show would have been better if Zoe was more interesting. I feel like she only got cast because she's Britney Spears' sister, but she really was not a great actress.
If you could, what would you do to help the hungry children of the world?
I don't know. Feed them? What other answer is there?
The other girls in this show carried it for her, no question. But what did make this show was all the character dynamics and all the ships. There were so many pairings you were just waiting to see happen. And speaking of ships, Quinn and Logan, that was a moment.
I was trying to compete with Brooke.
Well, don't. Hey.
That was one of those unexpected couples that actually ended up really good. I gave Chandler and Monica from Friends because they had to sneak around their friends. Bravo on that one. Like I said before, if we had a better main character, this show would have been in the elite tier, but for now, it is going into I Think You Dropped Something, my jaw. Next up is Figure It Out. I don't know if anybody remembers this show, but I did really like it. This is the one and only game show to be on my list. This show was super fun to watch. I liked that it brought in all the Nickelodeon stars to like compete on the show. My only complaint was that I wish they didn't tell you the answer at the beginning because I always wanted to play along, but obviously I couldn't. Sometimes I would like plug my ears, but the show had a lot of good segments. I feel like it wasn't dumbed down too much for children. It was still kind of hard.
Daniela.
Do you train other people?
Which I liked, and of course all the contestants showing off their little talent at the end was fun. This show was a good time. I feel like it encapsulated Nickelodeon at this time, and it is going to go into, well, that didn't work, just because obviously it doesn't stack up against the rest of these shows, so just putting it there, but it wasn't a bad show. Next up, Gravity Falls. This show was weird and dark and I think ahead of its time. Rewatching it as an adult, I realized how many adult-geared jokes that there are, and I loved that.
Movies are great! You watch the movie, you scare the girl snuggles up next to you, next thing you know you gotta raise a kid, your life falls apart. Forget that last part.
I loved when they put in a little something for the parents to laugh at, because it gave me validation. The animation style and overall vibe of this show was exactly what Disney needed at this time. It was different, it was smart, and it was so underrated. As far as characters, Grunkle Stan was an asshole in all the best ways, and Mabel was literally the backbone of this show. She was the perfect contrast to Dipper in personality.
What you reading? Some nerd thing?
It's nothing.
It's nothing. What? Are you actually not gonna show me?
And that dynamic, I think, is what made this show work so well. This show is right there with Phineas and Ferb, one of the best animated shows ever. This is going straight into I Think You Dropped Something, My Jaw. Up next is Jessie. So I did not expect this show to be higher up on my ranking when I was going through this, but here it is. One thing about Jessie, it did have a bigger main cast than most shows, and like I said with The Loud House, it was too hard to keep up and too hard to connect with all the characters, but this show really made it work. Every character was so different, but they were all somehow really great. I also love that the kids were adopted, because that was very different than the typical Disney Channel family archetype. And if I'm being real, I love Debbie Ryan. I think she's such a goofball in real life, and I think that's why she was the perfect Disney Channel actress, because you just have to be goofy, and she was just being herself. She wasn't even acting. As far as characters, I really liked them all, but Zuri was probably my favorite. I have a thing for the sassy ones.
They're acting like Rascal Flatts is down there. So I'm into country. Sue me.
And Bertram was really funny too. This show holds up in my book. I actually rewatched it not that long ago, and it's still great. It just doesn't hold quite enough lore as my top tier, so this is going into I Think You Dropped Something, My Jaw. Next, the moment you've all been waiting for, my girl, Hannah Montana. Okay, let's talk about the cultural reset that was Hannah Montana. I was and still am obsessed with Miley Cyrus.
I ain't gonna never stop loving you, bitch.
Growing up, this show was everything to me, and honestly, it still holds up. There's a reason it was one of Disney's biggest shows of all time. First of all, Hannah Montana was the blueprint for the double life story arc. Every network tried to copy the formula, but let's be real, nobody did it like her. I feel like every kid watching this was low-key convinced they could pull off this double life pop star moment. I know I did. But what really set Hannah Montana apart was the depth and the emotion in this show. Yes, it was super fun and super silly, but it also had a lot of heart. It wasn't just about the music or her secret identity, it also showed her real life struggles. Miley had to deal with the pressure of fame, losing her mom, trying to navigate all of her friendships, and balancing high school with a whole ass music career. Some of these episodes just hit super hard, and I think that's why it connected with so many people.
Baby, get ready, get set. Don't go.
And then the music. Let's not even play. Hannah Montana had the best soundtrack of all time. Other shows had good songs, but Hannah Montana was like a real pop star. If We Were a Movie, banger. He Could Be the One, bop. True Friend, I've Got Nerve. Rockstar, hits, hits, hits. And I know we're not talking about movies, but we can't forget the Hannah Montana movie. It was so good. It kind of destroyed me emotionally. At the end of the day, Hannah Montana was legendary. The fact that Miley Cyrus went on to be one of the biggest pop stars of our generation just proves how much of a cultural moment this show was. This show was fun, emotional, iconic, and easily is going straight into elite no notes. Okay, we're gonna be skipping over SpongeBob until the end. So next we have Victorious. Some of y'all might not believe me, but besides SpongeBob, this is my #1 Nickelodeon show.
'Cause I'm #1.
Victorious hands down had the best music out of them all, but it really had everything. Great characters, funny moments, drama, relationships, and most importantly, the music. If we're being real, it's kind of a Zoe 101 2.0. Tori was very bland, but she was better than Zoe. She wasn't awful, but compared to the rest of this cast, she just did not stack up against them. The show honestly would have been just as good, if not better, without trying to force Tori into every single scene and every single song. My two favorite songs are actually without Tori. None of the other Nickelodeon shows actually delivered hits the way this show did. Give It Up, Take a Hint, Begging on Your Knees, You Don't Know Me.
You push me back. push you back harder, harder.
These songs hold up to this day, and some of them were better than what was on the radio during this time. But what made Victorious really special for me was the characters and the cast. Some shows have their 1 to 2 standouts, but this show was just stacked. Jade was elite, her mean girl energy was everything, and she had some of the best one-liners. Kat was chaotic and adorable, even though they dumbed her down a little bit too much towards the end. Trina was a disaster in the best way.
Corey! What? I want something.
Rex and Robbie were that duo we didn't know we needed. Victorious for me was in a league of its own. It's amazing. It's going straight into Elite's No Notes. Next up is iCarly. This show defined Nickelodeon for quite some time. The whole internet show concept was ahead of its time. They were the archetype for what we have now as Tana Mongeau and Trisha Paytas. One of the best things about this show was the cast dynamic. Carly was the glue that held everything together. Freddie was the tech nerd we all loved. And Sam, an icon.
Hang on! I'm coming to get you!
Sam, be careful!
Thanks for the tip!
She was so savage, so chaotic, and low-key the real main character of this show, if we're being honest. And of course, we cannot forget about Spencer Shay, one of the best TV Big Brothers of all time. He also carried this show. If we're talking side characters and guest stars, Gibby was amazing. They had Michelle Obama, One Direction, Jack Black. The show had range. iCarly was so funny and still rewatchable. There's a reason that it got a reboot. iCarly is going into the elites. Next up, Drake and Josh. Drake and Josh shares 2 cast members with iCarly, Miranda Cosgrove and Jerry Traynor. Drake and Josh earned its respects. This show was peak Nickelodeon. It was so funny, so quotable, and it was honestly one of the best sitcoms that they made. One thing that made Drake and Josh stand out was how natural the comedy felt. Some shows tried way too hard to be funny, but this one was effortless. And it wasn't just funny for kids. It had really great comedic timing. Drake and Josh's chemistry was great, which makes sense because they basically grew up together on the Amanda Show before this came out. Drake and Josh were both funny on their own, but together it was the perfect storm. They were polar opposites, but you knew at the end of the day they would have each other's backs. And of course we have to talk about Megan. She was the OG little sister menace.
That I tricked you into thinking you have a rare skin disease by dyeing your hands and feet green while you slept. And that you were stupid enough to actually fall for it and then stick your hands and feet in buckets of lizard pee.
She made their lives living hell, and they low-key deserved it. They have some of the best one-liners in this show.
Hug me, brother!
I ain't calling you a truther.
And it's spherical! Spherical!
I have to say this is probably one of the most quotable shows of all time. Drake and Josh is easily heading into the elite tier. Up next is Good Luck Charlie. I loved Good Luck Charlie. Good Luck Charlie deserves a top 3 spot on Disney Channel. It was different than the usual Disney sitcom formula. It felt more real, like an actual family you'd actually want to be a part of.
Family, family, family.
This show also had a lot of heart and care put into it, which is why I think a lot of people connected to it as well. One thing I loved about this show was that every character mattered. There wasn't just one funny one relatable one. They all came together and had their own personalities that really made this show work. Bob and Amy Duncan are the most underrated Disney Channel parents ever. I think they were the only parents that I actually enjoyed watching their solo scenes. They had such strong personalities and they were just as entertaining as the rest of the cast. Bridget Mendler was amazing in this show. She's amazing at everything she does, clearly. I loved the video diaries. I have 2 little sisters. I tried making my own video diaries. Their sister bond felt so genuine and it gave that little extra emotional pull to really tie this show all together. If we're talking rewatchability, Good Luck Charlie is one of the best. It wasn't too over the top. It was funny, relatable, and just never tried too hard to be something that it wasn't. Good Luck Charlie is going straight into the elites. Up next, we have Wizards of Waverly Place. I'm gonna come out and say it. Wizards of Waverly Place is my #1 Disney Channel show. I love it so much. This show had everything for me. Magic, comedy, amazing characters, and somehow never got boring. And I think it had the most content out of any of these shows. It had a full 4 seasons, a Disney Channel original movie, and an hour-long special. and now it has a reboot. Unlike other Disney shows, this show started strong and ended even stronger. One of the biggest reasons I'm obsessed with this show is Alex Russo.
We have to hurry up because the light attracts moths, so just squint and run.
No, I don't run.
She is one of the greatest Disney Channel characters ever created. She wasn't the typical perfect good girl protagonist. She was sarcastic, lazy, feisty, but she came through when it mattered the most. Selena Gomez absolutely killed this role. I don't think this show would have been what it was without her. But every character brought something different to the table. Justin was the try-hard nerd, Max was the lovable dummy, and their sibling dynamic was perfect. And let's talk plot. This show was so creative. A lot of Disney Channel shows follow the same formula, but Wizards of Waverly Place had lore. The whole only one sibling can keep their powers storyline added real stakes to the show.
Oh, I hope it's Justin. I hope it's Alex. I'm gonna go with Max so we can say that somebody rooted for me.
And I was glued to the screen during the Wizard competition episodes. It wasn't just random disconnected episodes that you could kind of watch any of them. It actually felt like this story was building towards something. On a personal note, I was so obsessed with this show that I used to go outside and find sticks, and then I'd glue a marble to the top and keep it in my boot as my wand. Also, justice for Dean. I loved Dean and Alex together. I feel like they were so cute, and he was gone way too fast. Like I said, Wizards of Waverly Place is my #1 Disney show. Obviously, it's going in elite tier. Okay, finally, we have Girl Meets World. This show was so dramatic.
They want to see if I have autism. You don't. Let's go tell them you don't.
I get that it was trying to be deep, but at some points it was just too much. With that said, I'll give it credit for pushing the boundaries a little bit. It got a little more raw and serious about certain topics, which was cool, but if we're being real, it was so cheesy. Maya carried this show, Sabrina Carpenter. She was funny and spunky and sassy, and she honestly made this show worth watching at all.
Hi, I'm Maya. You're really cute. We should hang out sometime. You make me happy. You don't pay enough attention to me.
At the end of the day, I feel like I like a show that doesn't take itself too seriously, and this show took itself way too seriously. This is going right into Honey, Miss Auburn, big time. Okay, and I already addressed this at the beginning, but SpongeBob is above all of these shows. It is in a tier of its own, but I don't have it, so I'm just gonna set it right here, right at the front of the elite. Okay, so that is all for my ranking. If you agree or disagree with any of my rankings, please comment down below. Let me know what you think. If I missed any shows that you think should have been included on here, also let me know. I think for my next video, I'm going to rank the Big Time Rush songs. I've been on a kick with these songs, and they're so good, so stay tuned for that. But that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.